to all participants. My name is Shefali Chaturvedi and I head the developmental initiatives in CII. I'm here to welcome each one of you to the first session in the series of sessions that the Sector Skill Council for Persons with Disabilities and the Confederation of Indian Industries are rolling out for you, essentially to help our member companies in creating inclusive workplaces for persons with disabilities. From a CI perspective, we've been working in this area for the last couple of years, and our primary focus is to have many more companies than we have existing today who can champion the whole cause and help in integrating and mainstreaming persons with disabilities within their companies. We are hoping that we would have a lively participation today. Our overall objective is that we can help companies in addressing the questions, concerns, issues that each one of you may be having in expanding the work that you may already be doing, or if you're going to make a fresh start. Please feel free to ask your questions. We have a wonderful gallery of speakers today with us, companies who have already done a lot of work in this area. And while we have shared this with you, we have Aegis Limited, we have Accenture, we have KFC Yum, we have the Lemon Tree companies, we have TCS, each one of them a leader in their own right. And when you will hear them speak, you'll really get a good panoramic view of what they are doing to help enhance the number of PWDs, as also make the workspaces very accessible. What are the innovative things that they have already started, and how can you learn from it, and how can you interact with us further so that we can help facilitate the whole agenda for you going forward. So I'm going to now hand this over to my colleague here with me from the Sector Skill Council for PWDs, Mr. Anup Srivastav, the CEO, and I'm going to request him to say a few words of welcome.
Good afternoon, the esteemed speakers and participants. This is Anup Srivastav. I have the responsibility to take care of a skill council for persons with disability. Now, this is one of the skill council among the many which was set up under the Skill India mission. The difference is, while other skill councils are industry specific, they are vertical in nature, like telecom, textile, beauty, wellness, hospitality. We are horizontal in nature. We don't stick to one particular trade or job or sector. We cut across all the sectors. The purpose of setting this skill council was finally to mainstream the large population of persons with disability in India, and the route adopted to mainstream them was to give them skill training so that they are able to earn a livelihood for themselves and lead a life of dignity. When I say earn a livelihood, it can be on three classifications. One can be by getting employment. The other could be that they do some self-employment jobs, or third could be entrepreneurship. Right now, we are focusing more on employment and also self-employment. This council was set up by joint efforts of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, National Skill Development Corporation, and Confederation of Indian Industry under the aegis of Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. I would like all of you to look at a scenario that there is a person with disability, say about 16 or 18 years of age, and that person is totally dependent on his parents. He doesn't move. He lives in his house, whether in rural or urban area, and he has more than 50, 60 years to go. And his parents won't be there all along with him. Now, what happens to him when his parents or support system is no more there? Number one. Number two, such large population which is available in India, scattered all over the country, and they have years to give. They are also manpower resource which is scarce worldwide And in India, we have the opportunity to have this resource channelized through skill training and get various output from them. They have their own qualities. In many cases, you will find that they are more able than the able people in a specific job roles. And in the bargain, they will contribute to the national economy also, because you are redeploying such a large force to contribute to national economy. What we basically do, we set a standards for training. We adopt the job roles created by vertical sectors. We follow the same standards. We don't make any change into that. But depending upon disability, we align it in terms of methodology, that how a particular job role will be transferred to him in the language or medium that is appropriate for him, and he is able to understand and assimilate, so that he comes out at the same skill level, and the employers looks at him not because he is a disabled person, but he has a skill. Now coming to the topic, today's topic is having inclusive and diverse workforce interaction with champions. So basically it is on inclusion. Inclusion has two very important aspects. One is accessibility and the other is acceptability. Accessibility is in terms of physical arrangements for any person with disability in workplace, and acceptability is creation of an environment, a atmosphere, or maybe a culture within the organization where his assimilation induction is smooth, others also understand him, he also feels comfortable. And then we have speakers available with us who have great experience. They have experimented, they have been successful, they will share their experiences. So I now hand over to my colleague back again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Srivastav. You brought out a very interesting point about accessibility and acceptability, and that I think is what's going to be amply amplified by each of the speakers. May I now turn to Mr. S.M. Gupta, Global Chief People Officer at Aegis. Mr. Gupta brings with him 27 years of HR experience across a whole lot of sectors, and he's a distinguished thought leader. He's lent a lot of credence to the work being done by Aegis in this area of having a number of disabled people very well integrated within the company. I'm handing over to Mr. S.M. Gupta now. Mr. Gupta.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to the session. Thanks, Shefali, for that nice introduction. And over the period of next 10 minutes, I'm going to take you through some of our diversity practices and how we have been able to have an inclusive and diverse workforce at Aegis. So please feel free to note down your questions, which can be asked at the end of the session. I hope my presentation is visible to all of you. So friends, at Aegis, we strongly believe that diversity at workplace is no longer a nice-to-have phenomenon, but a business necessity in order to remain competitive and deliver sustainable business results. We embarked on this journey about 8 years back in 2009. When we embarked on this journey, that was a very, very conscious call. It was not by default, it was by design, because we wanted to include the different streams of communities and all the stakeholders into the organization mainstream, and also drive innovation and long-term sustainability of the organization while catering to a diverse community of clientele base, and thereby enhancing customer service, leading to customer satisfaction and loyalty. Not only this, we had this objective of also enhancing the employee morale, and we always thought that by adopting diversity practices in the organization, we would be able to position our organization as a talent magnet, as an employer of choice. So therefore, we designed this hexagonal model of diversity. So while my colleague has spoken about persons with disabilities, but at Aegis, We not only include persons with disabilities, but we also include different genders, socially and economically disadvantaged people, culturally and linguistically diverse people, mature age people, as well as indigenous people. And if you look at our diversity fact file, you will notice that persons with disabilities, I mean, as we speak, we have 687 persons with disabilities, which constitutes about 1.7% of our global workforce. We have about 40,000 people across 9 countries, across 43 global locations, and who are almost like 75 nationalities, who speak 38 languages. I mean, that's the kind of diverse workforce that we employ. While the current count of 687 persons with disabilities is there, but the fact is that over the last 8 years, we have provided employment opportunities to over 4,000 persons with disabilities, because this is an attractive workforce. So as they get more and more skilled, they are in demand outside, and therefore they switch on jobs. And we are happy to say that we are into the business of creating employability for these persons with disabilities. Likewise, in terms of gender, we have a global very healthy ratio of male-female 62:38. In terms of socially and economically disadvantaged people, about 35% of our global workforce comprises of this category. Mature age people, which are the people above the age of 45, that is 1.5%, and indigenous people, they vary between 80 to 100% of Aegis workforce in each of the geos that we operate. So, so this is the kind of diversity mix that we have as we speak in Aegis, and this has enabled a lot of things in Aegis as we saw in the earlier slide, and we will also see in the slides going forward. So now I would like to talk about some of the key enablers and some examples of the initiatives that we took in order to implement this hexagonal model of diversity. First and foremost, diversity and inclusion are among the key strategic agenda of the company, and the leadership team is absolutely committed to the cause. We have implemented some very progressive and very forward-looking HR policies, such as human rights policies, equal employment opportunity policy, prevention of harassment policies, policy on affirmative action and conflict of interest management, that truly demonstrate our commitment and approach to rigorously drive diversity and inclusion at workplace. Likewise, in our organization structure, we have provided for diversity champions at all the levels, may it be corporate level or business level or country level. So each place, each location, we have a person nominated as a diversity manager. And diversity is also a key theme of our sustainability reporting initiative, which is again a very vital initiative towards diversity and inclusion. And likewise, my colleague was talking about accessibility. So we have made the necessary workplace modifications in all our locations by catering to special needs for accessibility and convenience. May it be placement of wheelchair ramps or elevators with grab handles or widened glass door hallways for better wheelchair movements, handicap restrooms, auxiliary aids, interpreters, etc. So whatever is required, we have provided. And in terms of key enablers, last but not the least, is the periodic assessment and refinement on the initiatives to improve coverage and effectiveness, whereby we conduct surveys and we find out from people as to where we can improve further, and then take appropriate steps. In terms of some of the key, I mean, this is not the complete list, laundry list of initiatives. There are some that I would like to mention here. One is Project Second Innings, which is a global initiative to integrate females back into the ecosystem after a maternity break or after a career break. So we have registered with the P-Inc. Women Power at Work, which is an online platform to enable females to come back to workplace after a maternity break or after a career break. And we've hired hundreds of females through this program. Likewise, through our hiring and skill orientation and evaluation program, we have hired more than 2,000 apprentices, out of which there are some 300 persons with disabilities. The idea is to attract people from socially and economically disadvantaged population, and also to invite people who are into the category of persons with disabilities and take them through a 6 months apprenticeship program while paying them a stipend as defined under the Apprentices Act, and thereby making them skilled and absorb them subsequently in our job assignments. And we've been able to absorb 100% of the apprentices that we employed in persons with disabilities category in our hiring and skill orientation and evaluation program. Likewise, in Saudi Arabia, we embarked upon a major initiative of employing female population, those who are familiar with the culture of Saudi Arabia. It's a taboo on working of women in that country, and we started about 4 years back, where we had not even a single women at the workplace, and as we speak we have over 750 female workforce working for us in Riyadh in our call center. We did so many adjustments, right from the facility adjustment to policy adjustments, and we made all sorts of concessions for being able to employ that kind of female manpower in the conservative state of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. Likewise, a lot of work we did towards hiring of people from disadvantaged groups in South Africa, and in India we have partnered with the Sarthak Educational Trusts in all the 10 locations, and also the VRCs, so that we can source the persons with disabilities from them. Likewise, we have opened 7 new centers for providing employment opportunities for socially and economically disadvantaged people. And so while we have mentioned some of these initiatives, we have a very phenomenal tracking mechanism where we have diversity scorecards, diversity goals in each of the categories. Like for persons with disabilities, we have 1.75% as the key goal for all our HR managers and all our diversity managers to employ that kind of population into the workforce. And then we also collect a lot of data through employee and client feedback. And then finally, we run a diversity DNA scan survey internally, which is rolled out on an annual basis with the intent to identify the existing diversity mix and understand people perception regarding the initiative. As per the last survey results, 82% employees in Aegis perceived diversity and inclusion as a way of life at Aegis, and 84% persons with disability agreed that Aegis promotes diversity and inclusion actively in the workplace. So friends, the impact that Aegis created in terms of institutionalizing these inclusive practices at workplace resulted into winning of numerous awards and accolades from government, NGOs, and important industry bodies. Just to mention, we received President's Medal on 3rd of December for our work on persons with disabilities, and of course, apart from us, there were several other corporate sector. It was very heartening to note that so many corporates are coming forward towards employing persons with disabilities. And likewise, in terms of employees, we have consistently improved our employee engagement score in terms of brand, in terms of women empowerment, in terms of creating job opportunities, etc., etc. I mean, we have done. This has been the kind of impact on all the business and the stakeholders. So this kind of positive impact, friends, only reemphasizes our commitment towards building an inclusive workplace and creating more opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds, and especially persons with disabilities. Ultimately, our resolve here is to build Aegis organization into an institution that shall be known for its practices on diversity and inclusion. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the patient listening, and we will have Q&A at the end of the session as decided.
We now move to the next speaker. The next speaker is Dhanya Rajeshwaran, Director, Talent Strategy, Human Capital and Diversity at Accenture. Dhanya's career spans 17 years, and she has held HR leadership roles across businesses. She is deeply passionate about building inclusive workplaces and has led inclusion and diversity strategy for Accenture globally for several years. Dhanya is recognized as the 50 most influential HR leaders in Tech 2016 by World HRD Congress. She is also a TEDx speaker. and associated with the CII on a number of different initiatives. I'd like to welcome Dhanya and request her to proceed with her presentation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Shefali. I hope everyone is able to hear me.
Yes, please.
Great. And hopefully my screen is coming up as well. Please let me know once it's up.
Yes, please. I'll request you to please put on full slideshow. Yes, thank you so much.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. So first off, Shefali and team, I think this is a fabulous initiative, one that absolutely needs to be done. And I'm very honored to be part of your initial webinar as well. So without saying much about this, let me dive in. You know, whenever we speak about diversity at Accenture, we always take the widest possible view, right? And the belief is that every single person in this world must feel valued, must feel respected, and must feel included, so that they're able to bring the best of what they can do to the workplace and to the society at large. So that's the philosophy with this widest possible lens. And of course, what you see on this slide is some of the big segments that Accenture focuses on. You know, just as a background to those of you who may not be familiar with Accenture, we are a consulting, services, technology, and strategy firm. We operate in 60 countries with offices and service clients in over 120 countries globally. India as a geography is our largest. We're about 150,000 employees in India alone. And in my role, I'm the talent strategist for India, leading in what we would call as the talent ambition for Accenture. And one of the critical talent ambitions for us is how do we make Accenture the most inclusive and diverse organization in the world? So with that audacious dream that we have, you know, there's several initiatives that are in flight at Accenture, and of course, you know, we heard our colleague from Aegis speak about their widespread influence across the segments. Similarly, at Accenture, when we talk about gender, we really have very aspirational goals about at what point will we hit 50-50, and what point will we hit 40%. We're currently at about 35.5 and pushing towards 36% gender mix, and hopefully we will continue pushing the dial on that one. The topic for today is, of course, people with disabilities, and I want to go straight into the program of people with disabilities. And you know, when you think about disabilities as a topic and the whole concept of disability inclusion in the workplace, to me it really stems around three broad areas. One, an organization's ability to create that inclusive work environment, and two, that organization's commitment to make sure that the value for that diverse talent exists, and how is the organization investing in it, and three is, of course, in terms of the broader sense of collaboration and the consciousness that, you know, when you think disability inclusion, it is never a one person or a one organization game. It needs to come together with multiple stakeholders across the board, which includes people with disabilities themselves, our non-governmental agencies, as well as our extended partners who are invested in the space, right? So these are the three aspects of the disabilities program that we sort of focus on at Accenture. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talking primarily on, you know, some of the learnings that we've had as we've built this program out, and hopefully we'll take some questions at the end of this. You know, my association with disabilities as a topic started in the year 2009, 2010 as part of my global role. So I used to be in a global role then, and I used to lead inclusion diversity strategy for Accenture. And for the first time, I think we collectively as a leadership group sat down and understood that, you know, let's make sure that when we think diversity and when we think disabilities as a topic, we need to make sure that it is completely mainstream and not something that we would do you know, as an additional or an add-on, right? And the reason I'm calling this out was, in fact, therein was the premise that when we do hire our people with disabilities, or whatever we do for our people with disabilities, we will have to do it with the intention that they would have equal access in the workplace. They would come with the sense of recognition for their contributions that they would bring to the workplace. And at no point will they ever have to struggle for some things that would very easily come by for somebody who's not a person with disability, right? And therefore, when we started this journey, what we realized was it's one thing to aspire to hire a lot of people with disabilities, but it's another thing to actually make sure that your environment is set up for success, right? And when you say environment, it typically comes down to what you would call as the physical environment, the technological environment, and of course, we've added a category which is called attitudinal accessibility, because when we say accessibility, these are really the three parts of the accessibility. And attitudinal accessibility is all about the mindset with which people operate within the organization, irrespective of the career level or the hierarchy that they might be. You know, you could be an individual contributor, or you could be a managing director who's, you know, leading, you know, 20, 30,000 people, but still, how is your attitude and what is it that you bring to the workplace when you think about people with disabilities? So we sort of crafted that as our first step to say, what can we put as building blocks? And needless to say, one of the first things that we focused on was infrastructure, which is how do we prepare for emergencies? How do our people access our buildings, and, you know, the travel related policies, or the technological accessibility, which is with reference to the individual needs for assistive technology, or the organizational wide tools that every employee accesses. Is that accessible enough? And of course, the third part is what sort of PWD learning assets are we putting in place to help our entire organization become more disability confident, right? And I started by saying I'll share some learnings on this one. The very first learning that we had was when you're dealing with an existing large organization, pretty much every system of yours is going to be either legacy systems, outdated, or you're operating out of buildings that have been in existence for at least 20, 30 years. And therefore, the whole concept of accessibility had to be, you know, embedded at a design stage. So we had to actually say every new office of Accenture that would come up would need to have design principles of what does it mean to have an accessible building, right? Knowing pretty well that we would still have to deal with some of these older workplaces, and what are some of the remediation that we would need to put in place, right? So where I'm going with this is, I think even as organizations begin their journeys of PWD, everything will not be perfect and nothing will happen overnight. But I think the broader learning has been that if we are able to establish some ground rules or guardrails at the highest level, then chances are you will start seeing the change happen over a period of time, even as you're trying to fix it for the current population, right? So what you don't see on the slide is also the process for reasonable accommodations that we sort of enabled, because we knew that if our offices are not already accessible today, then at least the people accessing it should have their workarounds immediately available. So we created a process by which our people with disabilities could reach out to, you know, a designated authority, somebody senior enough so that they don't trouble our PWD employees with questions of, you know, budgets, or this is too costly, or why this can work or why this can't work, just to sort of cut that whole you know, hierarchy and the red tape around some of these decisions, and said, if you need something as a PWD employee, you could reach out to these designated authorities, and they would be on point to actually solve for you. And what that did was, it immediately made the PWDs feel a lot more comfortable and secure, that they now don't have to go through 100 processes to explain why they need something or why they don't need something, right? So that was a big learning for us, to say, start small, figure out a way to fix environment in its smaller situations, even as you are trying to set out the guardrails for the organization. The second part of it, of course, is when you talk about, you know, training programs and awareness. All of us know that. I think the biggest one was, can we help our support functions know what their role is? By that, what I mean is, people who are responsible for creating this inclusive workplace, are they aware of their role and what can they do? So even as we were doing a lot of this in India, a couple of years ago, we set up what was called as the Accessibility Council, right? And this council is consisting of people at the highest levels of each of these enabling functions. So you have your workplace leads sit on it, you have your technology leads sit on it, you have your business leaders sitting on it. And the mandate for this Accessibility Council is to actually say, by what time can we say that Accenture India is going to be fully accessible for our people with disabilities? We know it cannot happen overnight, but we need to have a strategic plan towards it, because unless we have a strategic plan, we will not be able to align the necessary budget, and some of this doesn't come cheap. So how do you sort of plan towards making that happen? And quite honestly, to me, I think this was like a big game changer, because you're suddenly looking at an organization that's not reacting to PWD related requests, but you're actually having an organization which is putting a stake in the ground with this highest level of leadership to say, you know what, we'll work towards this roadmap and we will make it happen. So that's on the one hand, and the other hand, enabling the immediate environment of our people with disabilities, which goes beyond workplace or technology related, right? Which is the people they interact with. One of the things that we said was, for us to be able to even know what to do, we need to know who our people with disabilities are. And some of you may know this, that it's not easy to just collect disability information, and with all the multiple data privacy protocols and such, we really had to figure out a way on how will we very reliably allow our employees to self-declare their disability status in a manner that they feel secure about the fact that they're sharing, and they know exactly what we're using it for. This allowed us to, do multiple things. I spoke to you briefly about emergency preparedness. It allows us to actually zero in on their career paths. So at this point in time, we're working on how can we deploy our career management framework for our people with disabilities in such a way that we can help them achieve their individual career trajectories, right? So that's again a very big part of making sure that the individual not only feels like they have the access that they need, but they also have the investment from the organization on what they can do with their careers and how they're able to grow their careers. So I am conscious of time at this point. Shefali, can you would I have a couple of more minutes to go through, or?
Yeah, please go ahead. If you can wrap it up in about 2 minutes.
Sure. Thank you so much. A couple of other things that I wanted to talk about was our PWD mentoring program, which is assigning senior mentors to our people with disabilities. Of course, it's completely employee-led in terms of their interest to be part of such a program, and pairing them with senior leaders who are able to guide them through their career journey, but with the context of the disability background, right? So that's again something that's working quite well. And the last part with which I will wrap this section is what we call as our Skills to Succeed program. Accenture has a great investment in our communities, and Skills to Succeed is one of the biggest initiatives that Accenture worldwide has taken to create skills in disadvantaged communities, to be able to make sure that they, we impact livelihoods and basically help people have jobs and get settled in their lives, right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to find an interface between our Skills to Succeed program as well as our PWD program, and make sure that whatever investment we are making in the Skills to Succeed is very targeted towards skill building, towards people with disabilities, and how we are helping them get up to speed, and even ensuring that we're able to hire them and offer jobs within Accenture. So a lot going on, and I know that we're going to have a couple of more series on this webinar. I'll be happy to take questions or come back again and talk a little bit more on any of this that need to be. But thank you very much, Shefali, for this opportunity. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Dhanya. You brought out some very, very interesting points about the importance of collaboration, that it's never a one-person game. You talked about this is not just about giving a job to a person with disability, but really looking at clear career trajectories. It's about their training, and most importantly, providing them with an equal access as anybody else. And last but not the least, you talked about setting the entire environment for success. And that, I think, is really the key to making it a successful program. The Accessibility Council, which has a very clear time bound agenda, is again something which I think is exemplary. And thank you for sharing your learnings. We'll now move to the next speaker. The next speaker is Mr. Aman Lal, the Chief People Officer at KFC Yum Brands. He is responsible for developing KFC's talent strategy and align it with business imperatives and organizational values. He's had a very, very diverse 360-degree industry experience, as I can see. He's done manufacturing, telecom, banking, IT, and ITES. So I think we can get nobody better suited than to talk than Aman Lal to talk about how they at KFC Yum Brands are working on the disability agenda. And maybe he may also touch upon either in this session or some other session, how do we get companies in the manufacturing and other sectors to also look at this, maybe in some other session, but I think it'll be important to hear from him about what they are doing. Over to you, Mr. Aman Lal.
So just starting with a bit of introduction for Yum. Yum is the world's largest restaurant company, 14 billion in terms of revenue, 15 lakh people, 43,000 restaurants across the globe. We are in 135 countries. There are only 59 countries where we are not present. And from an India standpoint, India and area countries standpoint, we are close to around 800 plus restaurants. As an organization, we want to be the world's most loved, trusted, and fast-growing restaurant brands. And we want to do this by investing in our business, people, and communities. And now, switching gears over to KFC now. At KFC, we've got close to 22,000 odd restaurants across the globe. And our ambition is to be 60,000 restaurants in the next 20 years or so. From our people promise standpoint, globally at KFC, our people promise is to be your best self, to have fun and make a difference in the lives of our customers as well as communities that we are part of. So the whole diversity bit is actually integrated in our people promise across the globe. So from a CSR initiative standpoint, we've got a program called, our CSR program is called Add Hope. And under Add Hope umbrella, there are two programs that we run. One program is run globally, that's called World Hunger Relief. That's a program where we actually, the program is to make sure that we end hunger, and that's through fundraising and active partnerships with the United Nations. So just to give you a bit of insight into this, every country collects funds at a particular time in the year through this program, and these funds are actually used to feed the hungry and the poor people in partnership with the United Nations. The other program that we have is a program where we've got special stores where we employ hearing and speech impaired youth. And this is a program which is a KFC India specific program. In this program, we in fact employ approximately 170 odd specially able hearing and speech impaired people with who are there in 18 stores, and there are So we've been running this program for the last 8 years or so. We've gone to a level where we not only just have team members who are serving the customers, we've got 7 shift managers as well. So there is a defined career path, which I'm going to talk about. And from the team members, we've been able to grow 7 specially abled team members as well. From an approach standpoint, our approach primarily is to ensure that the talent pool is ready. There is an assessment mechanism. I'll talk about the way we develop this group and how do we make sure that they come in the mainstream and they are not just team members. They go ahead and become shift managers, assistant managers, restaurant managers, so on and so forth. And what is the kind of enabling environment as an organization we've been able to provide them. Just from a readiness of talent pool standpoint, our principle, we are very clear that this is an unconditional platform that enables this set of specially abled youth to create a future of their own. So what we do is we look at hiring these individuals from various NGOs. There is a 60-hour classroom training that is provided to each one of these individuals, which has various modules starting from life skills to food safety to hygiene and grooming, so on and so forth. And once that is done, there is a certification, and each individual goes through the certification process. Once they are certified, these individuals choose whether they want to be with KFC or they want to seek any other employment. So from our standpoint, it is completely unconditional. These individuals have the opportunity to choose a KFC career, or they can choose any other career with any other organization. They are free to choose that. From an assessment standpoint, we are very clear. We feel that disability is never an inability for these individuals. So we've got technology-aided assessment tools, which essentially means that there is something called team member readiness inventory, and there is a video which is actually played in sign language, and that's how the assessment is done. So the specially abled youth would actually go through this video-based assessment, do the assessment. This assessment would be more paper pen for all the other employees, but for them, it is technology enabled, where they go through the test, and the individuals who successfully clear the tests are the ones who get hired. So from a hiring standpoint, there is no distinction, but it is just the assessment tool which is slightly different. From a development standpoint, there are a couple of things that we do to make sure that there is conducive learning opportunities that are provided to these individuals. Number one, we've made sure that all our leaders who work in the store are the ones who are trained in sign language, whether it is the restaurant manager or the area coach or the people who actually work in the store. All of them are trained in sign language to interact with the hearing and speech impaired team members. Then there are, from a learning standpoint, there are e-learning modules that are available, and these e-learning modules are again available in sign language for us. Each of these specially abled individuals go through those e-learning modules as they progress in their career. What we've also done is, like, if for rest of the team members, our learning is for 6 weeks. For these individuals, the learning is for a little relaxed, and it's for typically 7 to 8 weeks. From a career standpoint, we are very clear as an organization that as far as career is concerned, It is capability and not disability, which is the filter for growth. This essentially means that their career path for the specially abled youth is not at all different from the other team members that we have in the store. So the moment the individual completes 12 months in the role, there is a readiness checklist that the individual gets filtered on, and if we feel that the individual is ready, the individual is assigned certain modules. Once the modules are assigned, the individual actually gets into training, and then he goes through the assessment process. Once he's done his training for the role, the individual goes through the board of review, which is like any other team member in the store, and gets assessed by a panel from a readiness of role standpoint. And once we feel that the individual is ready, then the role is assigned to the individual, whether it is the shift manager role or the assistant manager role or the restaurant manager role. So the whole idea here is that as an organization, we are not just in the business of increasing the numbers or the representation of team members in our store. We are very clear that it's not just representation, but also these individuals need to have a higher order impact where they should be able to lead a team like any other shift manager or store leader. And finally, while from an HR processes, I talked about the HR processes right from assessment to development, there is an environment, and Anup in his initial address talked about accessibility and the enabling environment. In our stores are designed in a manner where this environment is provided. Just to make sure that customers, when they interact with the specially able team members, there are actually signages put in the store, and we've done it in our KFC unique way, wherein there is, the moment there is a customer who enters the store, there is a signage written outside which says you are entering a special KFC. The moment the customer gets to order, or in the front of the house, there is a signage which says there is a mouse pad which says please point your order here. Another thing that we've done, which is very unique, we've actually modified some of our equipments at back of the house, whether it is flashlights. So just to give you an example, if the chicken gets fried completely, in a normal store there is a buzzer which beeps in, and the team member gets to know that the chicken is fried. Now I have to take out the chicken from the fryer. But in special stores, there is a flashlight instead of that buzzer. There is a red flashlight that comes out, and the team member comes to know that the chicken is fried and they have to take it out. From a journey standpoint, it's been a very, very enriching journey. We started with one restaurant in 2009, and remember, each of these restaurants have at least 60% of individuals who are specially hearing and speech impaired employees. So essentially meaning that these guys are in majority, and the rest of the team is actually in minority. This is to make sure that if they are in majority, they get more confidence in the store. So we started with one restaurant in Hyderabad where we employed 20 people. Now, over the last 7-8 years, the initiative is almost 18 restaurants across 10 cities. We've got 170 plus people. And our ambition by 2020 is that every 15 stores that we open, we want one of those stores to be a specially abled store. And finally, in March 2013, at Yum, we received the prestigious presidential award from India's President Pranab Mukherjee for our work around hearing and speech impaired people with disabilities. And there are a lot more, or quite a few other recognitions, whether it is FICCI or Economic Times and many other World Franchise Conference that we've received for this initiative. So that's something that we do at Yum. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lal. I think you brought out a very exciting point about a combination of almost like altruism combined with a business strategy when you talked about an unconditional training that is done of persons with disability. You've also talked about the whole certification process, the assessment mechanism, the importance of this. And most importantly, to my mind, is also the fact of what you shared about building confidence amongst those with disability, where in some of your stores you have more hearing and speech impaired employees than those who are not. I think that's a very unique thing that you have tried out successfully. Thank you very much for sharing your learning. I'll now move to our next speaker, Aradhna Lal. Aradhna is almost like a trailblazer in this whole area of working with persons with disability. She leads the sustainability initiative at Lemon Tree Hotels, which includes planet, environment, and people inclusion, as well as the overall diversity agenda. The company's strategy is to build an inclusive employee base and has been hiring employees with disability for 9 years now. And the goal is to take this to a whopping 15% and 20% and more beyond that. I think the other part that strikes us about Aradhna is the fact that in addition to employing to mainstream and employ more and more persons with disability within the Lemon Tree brand of hotels, she and a few of her colleagues are so committed that they've also signed up for an advanced ISL learning program and certification. I think change really begins at home here. They've also very successfully employed folks with Down syndrome and autism, which I think is indeed very unique. So over to Aradhna now.
Thank you, Shifali. It's really great to be on this webinar today. The kind of work we've done at Lemon Tree has been challenging, exciting, and the journey's now just entered its 10th year. We started in 2007. I'm going to walk you through this journey with a few slides. It just makes it easier. So the first question I think we can ask ourselves, and for many of you who are on this webinar to understand why does an organization go in for inclusion, we can tell you that actually. There is actually a business case for this, and I'll tell you how it goes. If we look at the employee side, the first thing that will occur when you get people who are differently able into the team is that the creativity of the team will go up. When somebody cannot hear and speak, or somebody cannot see, or someone has an intellectual challenge, there are ways in which they learn to live their lives like everybody else. And there is another faculty of theirs which will get stronger and sharper. And when they look for solutions to any kind of operational situation or to a problem, they can actually be more creative. We've seen this happening in our restaurants and housekeeping at the front desk. It's pretty incredible to watch it happen, in real time. The other idea is employee engagement goes up for the entire company. Of course, those who are with disability feel very proud to be working here, and then they are also more loyal to the company. But there is an impact on the entire team without disability. I'll be sharing some numbers with you shortly. What they feel is that as employees of a hotel company, they have a sense of pride that they work somewhere which is so inclusive, and they can contribute to the lives of their colleagues who would usually not get a job so easily if we were to look at it over the last 5 or 10 years in India. There's a sense of satisfaction and a sense of pride both. So that's the employee side. Then there is the brand benefits. So if those of you who have joined our webinar are from the diversity piece or from HR, I would like you to ask your chief marketing officer what are his or her goals for the brand. And I can tell you this, those goals are trial, return, and recommend. So if a customer hears about your brand and knows you're inclusive, they'll be pretty interested to say, let me go see what this is all about. Once they stay with you and they use your brand, if they find the service to be good, which does happen in the case of Lemon Tree, they would become loyal to your brand and they'll say, I'm going to use them again in the next city. And certainly some of them, maybe not all, but some of them will recommend to colleagues, to friends, and of course they'll write on TripAdvisor, which is how the message really gets out. So as a chief marketing officer, the key job of marketing is this, and it gets delivered through this initiative if you build it into your business plan. The third aspect is that of nation building, and this is simple. If the society has diversity in it, then why not our organization? If, as part of our normal business, it's possible to give opportunity to those who do not get opportunity or get it with greater difficulty, and if by simply opening our doors we can offer dignity, independence, and self reliance, then in some manner, are we not helping build a better nation? It's something to think about. Just to tell you briefly how does our story go? We started close to 14 years ago. The brand is youthful, it's fresh. There are three brands actually. Lemon Tree Premier, which is upscale or 4-star plus. Lemon Tree Hotels, which is mid-scale or 4-star, and that's the mother brand. Red Fox Hotels, which is economy, or we can say 3-star. Today, there are 40 hotels across 23 cities, and this aggregates to 4,000 rooms with about 4,000 employees. So, when I was talking about engagement and satisfaction and pride earlier, I was talking about 4,000 people. What's exciting is our growth has been so quick in the last 14 years that we are today the third largest hotel chain in India if you look at owned rooms. Now, just a few definitions I'm sharing. This is about the different disability types that we brought in to Lemon Tree. We gave it a broad definition first. We said when we talk of inclusion, let us make a very comprehensive, meaningful effort of it. And we've called that opportunity deprived Indians or individuals. The idea is these are folks who would not usually get a job because maybe their education is lacking or simply the opportunity is lacking. So the first segment under ODI is employees with disability. That's what we're speaking about today, EWD. Physical disabilities include speech and hearing impaired or deaf, orthopedic handicap, and in the future we are trying to bring on visually impaired and low vision. There are some trials going on in Bangalore and something to do with the software actually, which is causing a bit of an issue. We're working on it. In intellectual disability, we've started our work and done very well with 5 trials in Down syndrome. And in autism, we've done 2 trials, and we hope that we can streamline this very soon. The other segment, which I'll speak very briefly because today's focus is disability, the other segment under opportunity deprived Indians is the economically and the socially weak segment. If you look at the elements in this, we've tried to again be as wide as possible. So BPL, below poverty line, women who are either widowed or abandoned or battered or destitute or divorced and need to support themselves and possibly their children. Then orphans, of course, above the age of 18 for all categories. Individuals from economically weak families and certain communities from India where maybe getting jobs is not so easy. Northeast, Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. The only thing we've said is we are looking at those who can't complete their education. So maybe up to class 9. That's the kind of rider we've put on that. So these are the 2 segments that form opportunity deprived Indians. Now, looking at the vision we have, we started this work in 2007. So at that time, of course, it was 0. Then today, that's January 2017, we have about 450 employees with disability. That's 12% of the group, and another separate 450. We don't double count, economically and socially weak. By 2025, we hope to bring the company to 40 to 45%, just under half of the company. We would like them to be opportunity disabled or opportunity deprived Indians. Now, think about this statistic for a minute. What this means is if you're bringing in people who didn't get enough exposure in their early years and who could not complete their education, and you want them to work as regular full-time employees in your company, what is the role your company has towards training and towards skilling them to get to the next level. Aman was sharing what Yum does in terms of the trainings and moving them up levels. We do similar work at Lemon Tree, and it's very important for this segment. I'm going to share a few photographs with you because I think the story gets told much better. So I'll tell you what I have to, and you can look at the photograph. So this is a boy who's in housekeeping at the Lemon Tree Premier at Delhi Airport. He's been with us for over 2 years, and the kind of responsibility, he's speech and hearing impaired, the kind of responsibility we give to our room boys, so his role is called room boy, is that they have a master key, they're assigned a floor, sometimes more than a floor, and they have to complete the cleaning of those rooms in their 9-hour shift. The average number that's done by any employee in the company is around 16 to 17 rooms a day. Somehow we see that the deaf or the speech and hearing impaired are doing 19 to 20 rooms a day. So this is really 15% more efficiency, and I would call that a business case. This is one of our orthopedically challenged. She's not exactly a dwarf. Her name is Guria, and she's just, but when she has to work in a public area, there are some tools she has to use to take care of her height, basically, so that she can reach out to all areas. But she's very, very energetic, and she really participates fully. This is a customer cell, which is basically manned on the telephone. It's 24 hours. So here we have a mix of colleagues. Some are without disability, some are with disability. In this shot, we are showing you 2 colleagues who are on wheelchair. And the third one who's sitting towards the back, he does not have a right arm. So he's actually able to work very well with his left arm because he was naturally born as a lefty. So you can imagine nature's sense of giving him strength. So in this cell, we use computers, telephones, and also there's some stuff that has to be written manually and some photocopying has to be done. So this team of about 7-8 people manages it and runs it 24 hours. This is the work with Down syndrome. This is at the Red Fox East Delhi. It's in Kondli. This boy has been with us for just under 3 years, maybe 2.5 years. And right now he's putting together the buffet setup. So you can just observe in 1 or 2 photographs. So all this he's been trained on for close to 9 months before he got hired, actually. And if you look at the setup, nobody has come and assisted him. Nobody has moved things around. It is the way he did it. This is again back at the Red Fox Hotel at Delhi Airport. Again, Down syndrome. This person has been with us for a little over 3 years, and he's delivering an in-room dining order, which is room service. In our original definition, when we did the job mapping for Down syndrome, we had excluded room service completely from the task because we felt with intellectual disability, it will be difficult for them to understand how to go to the floor, how to find the room, how to ring the bell, how to place the items in front of the guest and wish the guest, everything where there's nobody else to assist him. But we realized as their confidence got built up in the coffee shop, we realized that we could actually train them. We did this first with staff. So the person who would place the order from the room was actually a staff member, and he would go and serve and deliver till the time he built the whole routine to perfection. And today he's one of our important room service order delivery boys. So this is him getting into the elevator and then him arriving at the room, and he's about to go in. That's another one of the Down syndrome boys in the coffee shop putting together the buffet again. And then there are a few photographs that are up with the group together. There are 2-3 of them, just for you to get a look at how the team is. Some of them are kind of fun photographs. This is 2 teams together. One is Lemon Tree and one is Red Fox at the Delhi Airport. Well, this is a video. I'm not showing that right now in the interest of time. What I really want to emphasize is inclusion will work for us. If you look at this last photograph, it's about an integrated team. So there are people with disability and without. There are boys, there are girls. There are 4 or 5 types of disability. When you're building a culture of inclusion, if you can eventually move in this direction, we didn't do this from day one. When we started 10 years ago, it was only speech and hearing impaired. Physical handicap came 7 years ago, and intellectual disability came 4 years ago. So it was done in stages, of course. But once you get to this position, the sense of creativity and the sense of integration is extremely high. And we've been very honored and happy to receive a number of awards over the years. From the Government of India, from the President, we received the Best Employer Award for PWD again in 2016. It was the second time. and there have been a number of international awards too. It's very interesting. I must share this with all of us on this webinar. I've made a trip to UK. I've had people come in from the US and from Southeast Asia. And the kind of work that they have observed, and they have done very extensive familiarization visits of our hotel. The kind of level of work they've observed, they have clearly said to us that this is not happening in their country. So there's something really interesting to think about for CII, that in India, we're actually in some way setting an example for other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aradhana, for this very inspirational story that you've shared with us. You brought out some very important key points. One is that it is a business case in Lemon Tree to employ persons with disability. You've also coined a very interesting term, which is opportunity deprived Indians. And under this umbrella categorization, you have various facets, and disability being a very important component of that. Thank you also for sharing the very grand vision of having almost like 43% opportunity deprived Indians. I mean, that's really some target that you're working towards. And last but not the least, you've shared with us and you've brought alive, introduced us the actual heroes of Lemon Tree, persons with disability. And I think we're all very grateful to you for sharing their stories. You're clearly very, very passionate about this. So thank you, Aradhana. I will now move to Srila Dasgupta, who really leads by example. Srila is an Associate Vice President and Head of Diversity and Inclusion at Tata Consultancy Services, Business Process Services. Srila has very strategically engaged with the United Nations, ILO, CII, NASSCOM, Tata Group, HR, DIN for diversity issues at global and national levels. In her current role, she focuses on issues relating to gender diversity, disability inclusion, cultural cohesion, and LGBT rights at the workplace. The geographies she works with include India, US, Latin America, China, Philippines, and Saudi Arabia. And she has had prior engagements with Nepal, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. What better person than Srila to come in as our last speaker and really with all her global experience and work to talk about what TCS is doing in the area of inclusion of persons with disability. Srila, over to you.
Hi, thank you for such a generous introduction. And it's always good to come as the last speaker because you realize that most of the speakers have put out all the points. So I'm actually going to try and be brief. I'm going to basically tell you about the lessons that we have learned or we are learning on the job. Like, we kind of coming into it slightly blind, and certain things are working, certain things are not working. So we are still in the middle of the journey, and it was very interesting to hear all the other journeys as well. And this is a great platform to bring everybody together, CII, because I think it's a great exchange learning platform as well. So to tell you very briefly about the Tatas, we've been around for almost 150 years. TCS is the IT/ITS company, which is established about 48 years back. And we have over 350,000 employees, of which 1/3 are women. We work out of over 45 countries, and we have persons of 131 nationalities working with us. So we are a diverse organization, and when we are looking at diversity identities that we focus on, we look at cultural diversity, we look at gender, we look at disability, we look at LGBT inclusion, we look at socially, economically, regionally, ethnically vulnerable groups, and we look at generations as well. So I think one of the important things is the organization being committed to being inclusive is really the first step, as many of my fellow speakers have already said. So I'm actually going straight into strategy, because I think that's really, that might be the most useful takeaway for everybody. One is that when we're looking at disability inclusion, what are we really up against? So I'm actually probably summarizing a lot of what has already been mentioned. One is that internally, I really want to mention this, is that when we're looking at disability inclusion, internally people really look at approaching the whole issue from a sympathy point of view. The good news about that is that everybody's heart is in the right place. The not such good news is that the moment you look at it from a sympathy angle and not from a business imperative, you're going to not look at creating an equal workplace. You're not going to look at giving equal opportunities. You're not going to focus on ability. You're going to focus on visibility. You are not going to look at career progression. So there are so many things that you kind of kill the moment you approach it through a sympathy lens. So like message number one to everybody is that if you're looking at disability inclusion, you have to look at it from an empathy lens. The second thing is that there is this whole mindset barrier that one comes across. I know we're going to have another webinar later on where we're looking at creating barrier-free workplaces, but this is the starting point. And we find that the attitude of frontline or mid managers who are actually responsible for day-to-day deliverables or project-based deliverables or timelines or dealing with fire. So that at the workplace, these managers have an immense amount of apprehension that if we have persons with disability on the team, they will not be able to deliver. They will not be productive. They will not be able. They will slow the team down. They will lose their team R&Rs, and so they keep saying that you should actually hire them for HR or support functions. The third thing that one deals with internally is a sense of discomfort. Whether we like it or not, every human being is extremely uncomfortable with somebody who's not according to them normal. So if you find somebody who is ethnically different, if you find somebody who has different food habits, so if you find somebody who has who does not have all facilities as you would expect, or somebody who's blind, or somebody who's orthopedically disabled, there is a certain discomfort because I think there is a fear of the unknown, of not knowing how to deal with that situation. And so that becomes, that is part of the unconscious bias, which kind of comes up as a silent barrier. Because overtly, even if people are saying, yes, we are there with you and yes, we want to do it, eventually when we hire people and we're looking at skill fits for allocation, we come up against this, like glass wall basically, where people say, oh, yeah, maybe not, come back to me later. So that is another huge thing that people come up against. And I'm going to discuss in the next slide how we actually look at countering them. Then, of course, the whole enabling environment, physical enabling environment, technological enabling environment, and looking at it from a trajectory point of view. Here I have to mention that onboarding persons with disability is a more recent phenomenon. And I'm very glad that we're talking about career growth. That continues to be a huge challenge. But I think if we look at the bright side also, is that the cohort of persons with disability who we are growing into next roles is just starting. The first cohort may not have been so successful. We do have like a couple of real success stories on board, but the cohort that we like now, it's kind of expanding. The number of people we are onboarding with disabilities is expanding. Now, if we start focusing on upskilling, on career growth, this is where, and then look back, say 3 years from now, 5 years from now, then I think the real conversation on this can start. Here, I think we're still at a fledgling level to start bringing solutions to the table on this. Externally, of course, the one thing that we come up against is having a limited talent pool, because if you do not have access to resources like basic education resources, like access to public arena because of lack of access to public transport, you are going to really have to hunt for persons who are have the particular skills that you're looking for. If you are looking at, I had diversity in the BPOs or the BPO unit of TCS. It is easier to find persons who are graduates or class 12 pass or even class 10 pass in certain cases for the BPO industry amongst the persons with disability, rather than having software engineers for the IT side. So moving on, I just want to say, try and discuss what we feel actually works in favor of people looking at disability inclusion at a very serious level, which I think we are doing today. First and foremost, there has to be organizational commitment. There are no two ways about it. You have to sit your inclusive philosophy within a broader organizational framework of equality and inclusion. The Tata Code of Conduct, by which all the Tata Group companies, follow, is provides a framework of equality, of respect, and of inclusion. And respect for the individual is a core TCS value. And when you have these as your levers, or these as your frameworks, it is possible for you to start the conversation far more easily. Because if you have a leader coming in and saying that, oh, you know, I'm not too sure, then you actually have arguments on your side. We also have a diversity policy, which is fairly extensive, and that too is a good lever to have. And then nothing can happen without leadership commitment. You really need top-down like, you know, a top-down voice really works. And I think that would be true of everybody. So the infrastructural, the access, whether it's physical or technological, is again something that I will be taking up in the next webinar, but it is very similar to those which have already been mentioned. I will just say that we do a review of our older buildings using the American Disability Association guidelines and provide reasonable accommodation basis those. The other thing that I think I just want to tell you a small story is sometimes even the new buildings are not perfect, because this was for I'd gone for a meeting to another place. I myself walk with crutches and am a wheelchair user at certain if I have to walk too long distance or if I have to do stairs. And there was a building that I went to for a meeting which had a fabulous wheelchair facility, a washroom facility, but the door was so hard. Like I actually had to have a colleague who had to help me open and shut the door. So you know, these are small things which we miss out, which is very clearly spelled out in the ADA guidelines. Then sensitization, in fact, is also something which creates a barrier-free workplace. We, of course, have workshops. These are like in-person workshops, because we are very large, and a large part of our sensitizations are done over web. But when one is handling sensitive topics like this, it has to be a one-person, one-to-many kind of in-person workshops. We have a fabulous experience with Vishesh, which has been providing our business leaders, our admin staff, our HR, our IT teams with sensitization and an understanding. I won't say sensitization alone, understanding of the whole disability inclusion story. Job mapping was something that we had done, not really big. We actually we have a philosophy that we have to match skills. We have to create full access and we have to match skills to the job requirements. But we did a job mapping exercise because it created an aha moment in the minds of our leaders or our middle managers, who realize that if you have a barrier-free or a completely accessible workplace, there are very few jobs that a person with disability can take on. Recruitment, we tie up with our NGO partners, which include Vishesh and Sarthak. We go to job fairs, and also we are visiting, when we visit campus and we have campus hiring, we do look out for students with disability. And I've already mentioned that we're looking at best skill fit allocation. One of our blind employees who was hired about 4 years back, she's done extremely well for herself. We have another recent joinee who's a para national champion. She has been recently given a promotion. So it's a matter of, if you have a good skill fit, you actually are setting up that person for success. And that is something that I think everybody, all leaders and everybody involved needs to look out for. We have the Advanced Computer Training Center or training program, which provides a 45-day employability skills program for the blind to suit the basically the ITES or the BPS industry. Because it was felt, and these have various soft skills which are provided along with IT training. Because previously, when we started this program, we realized that blind persons who are being provided computer training do not actually provide the other skills which are required for getting them jobs. Then Shefali's already mentioned in my introduction that I really feel you cannot do anything without allies. You have to build strategic, here I mentioned external, but I think you need to build strategic internal as well as external partnerships, and that is really what is going to work, because we learn from each other. And I think the other thing is that we have to be very honest, very non-judgmental. We have to be very inclusive about the voices. It's also very okay to go ahead and say, okay, fine, this is not something we can do, maybe we'll come back to it later. And something which this bill has brought in, I think, which really works in every company's flavor, or all of us internal advocates in every company, is that now it becomes a compliance issue. And once it is a compliance issue, I think it's very easy to actually push through or advocate for this. So this is a photograph of our national para badminton champion, Baishakhi Dev, who's part of our talent acquisition group in HR. She's also the winner of the Peru International Senior Ranking Tournament. She is a phenomenal human being with an amazing sense of humor. She got a disability because of an accident, but she's an amazingly committed and capable professional. And she's also an amazing and capable player. She was awarded the Khel Ratna Award last year in 2016. So thank you. With that, over to you, Shefali and team. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Srila. You brought out some very interesting aspects. The key takeaways for me are about your underscoring the necessity of commitment of the organization, the importance of empathy, which you talked about, being non-judgmental. You also talked about various challenges, external and internal. The external being limited talent pool, which I think we will talk about in one of the future webinars. The limited public spaces for persons with disability, and the law perhaps so far not being sufficiently geared. Hopefully things are changing now. And you rounded up very nicely with a personal story which really emphasized on the importance of detailing, because small things do matter. So thank you very much, Srila. Now, before we move to the next section of our webinar today, I just want to thank all our 5 speakers. All of you are leaders. You've shared your organizational stories, your personal stories and journeys. You've given us a panoramic view of why you recruit persons with disability. How have you made the workplace work for the company and also for the employee? The ingredients of vision, policy, empathy, business case, skills, innovation, and passion at the end of the day drive your inclusion agenda. So thank you, each one of you, for being with us today. And now we'll move to the next part of our webinar, for which I'm going to hand over to Mr. B.S. Rao. With this, we come to the end of the session. Thank you very much to all the participants and all the speakers. We have collected your feedback, and we hope to improve the quality of the webinar, and any other suggestions that you want to give us, you're most welcome to send us a mail. Thanks once again, and we look forward to for you to join the next 3 sessions that we have planned for you on 10th February on barrier-free workplaces, the Rights of Persons with Disability Bill 2015 on 17th February, and enhancing skills on 10th of March. With that, I'd like to come to the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.